Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justyna Bargielska, and I will be your host for this program. Tonight you'll be listening to Philip Nikolayev from the US and Justyna Bargielska from Poland. They will both give a reading, and after the second reading, I will have a short talk with them. During the readings, the translations will be projected, as well as some images of their own handwriting. You will also see some pictures that the poets took in their home country. I will introduce the poets to you both in Dutch and English, and the talk at the end will be in English. Philip Nikolayev bracht zijn jeugd door in Rusland en Moldavië. Hij groeide tweetalig op en spreekt zowel Engels als Russisch. In 1990 immigreerde hij naar de Verenigde Staten. Nikolayev maakt in zijn poëzie gebruik van uiteenlopende vormen. Hij beoefent niet alleen het vrije vers, maar schrijft ook rijmende gedichten. Hij initieerde zelfs een nieuwe vorm, het ommuurde sonnet, waarbij hij om het sonnet heen in vrije versvorm groot tekst metselt met een aanvullende en commentarierende werking. Het meest typerend voor zijn poëzie is toch het vrije, breeduit meanderende gedicht dat spontaan lijkt te zijn opgezet en op lichtvoetige wijze grote menselijke thema's belicht. Zo wordt in het gedicht De kunst van het vergeten het thema van de menselijke herinnering op een speelse en assertieve manier aan de orde gesteld. Het gedicht opent met het huiselijke voorval: gisteravond kookte ik per ongeluk mijn sokken in de magnetron. Maar gaandeweg wordt het abstracter. We vechten voor onze herinnering, de waarheid zoals die zich eens voordeed. Maar om ons iets te herinneren, moeten we ook weer iets vergeten, een andere waarheid. En ineens bevinden we ons midden in de Sovjet-Unie bij zijn grootmoeder. Vaak lijkt hij erop uit om de grofkorrelige rommeligheid van het leven zelf te betrappen, die voortdurend aanleiding geeft tot verrassende beschouwelijke wendingen. Zoals in het gedicht Adelaars, waarin hij bij het zien van twee unieke vogels zich plotseling afvraagt of het niet vermomde drones zijn. Philip Nikolayev was born in Moscow and spent his childhood in Russia and Moldavia. He grew up bilingual, speaking both English and Russian. In 1990, he immigrated to the United States. Nikolayev uses diverse forms in his poetry. He has practiced not only in free verse, but also writes rhyming poetry, including sonnets. He even created a new form, the walled-in sonnet, in which an accompanying commentary and free-form verse is constructed around the sonnet. But most characteristic of his poetry remains the free, meandering poem, which seems to have arisen spontaneously and which discusses big human issues in a light-hearted and sometimes witty way. In the poem The Art of Forgetting, the theme of human memory is raised in a playful manner. The poet begins with an offhand reference to his own carelessness. Last night, I cooked my socks in the microwave by mistake. But gradually more abstract artillery is employed. We'll fight for our memories, the truth as it appeared once. But to remember something, we need to forget something, a different truth. And suddenly, we find ourselves transported to the Soviet Union when Nikolayev introduces memories of his grandmother who had tried to forget the terror of dialectic materialism by reading the Bible. Often it seems that he is trying to capture the coarse-grained messiness of life itself. This constantly gives rise to surprising philosophical twists, like in the poem Eagles, in which the observation of two unique birds suddenly gives way to suspicion. Could they be disguised drones? It is typical of this poet that he poses such a horrifying question in a light, comical tone. Please welcome to the stage the sock-cooking birdwatcher, Philip Nikolayev.
Chet, may I use that as a blurb in my next book, The Sock-Cooking Birdwatcher? Thank you, dear friends. I am so happy to be here, and it's been, I want to say a long week. It hasn't even been a week, but it's been such an intense time. I'm sure I will remember it for a very long time. My thanks to the festival, to everybody who has worked very hard to make this possible. I've never seen an arts festival like this or a poetry festival like this. You take this to a new level. And I think, one day in the history of these things, when it is written, hopefully the Rotterdam Poetry International Festival will hold pride of place and deserve some kind of special mention. I'll go on to the poems. Eagles. 2 eagles circled over Cambridge today. A rare sight, lovely against the chalkboard sky. Drawn to stare, I soon noticed that they went around in near-perfect circles at even speed. In fact, they looked exactly identical. Their widespread wings didn't so much as flutter. I heard a thin electrical whiz and wondered if they carried tiny surveillance cameras on board that could scan Shakespeare and the pathos of rambling that I was reading. Give me 1 second. I got the same poems, but I've got the right poems in the wrong order. I have another batch. They looked exactly identical, you know. Locked. I know 2 homeless men. They both believe that evil forces have messed with their lives. Always, every time something good seemed about to happen, something really bad happened. And so it keeps going on forever and ever more, like a bad spell, a curse. Evil forces will do anything. Repeatedly steal your eyeglasses to keep you from reading, put you in trouble with the law, cut the strings of your guitar, plagiarize your songs, gun down your mother in a Chicago supermarket during a late-night shift. This a long time ago. Make you sleep God knows where, God knows how, alone. And whenever there's the littlest chance of a romance, some nasty shit happens and screws it all to bits. One believes in an afterlife and in numerology. The other is an atheist but sings in a church. If you carry a guitar, the cops don't harass you as much. If you panhandle and get donations from college students, cops will suspect you're pushing dime bags. They both hate the distant, indifferent rich, and both respect me just because I'm a poet. How locked are we all into our respective fates? The rich can't help being rich. The poor, poor. The invisible hand piles invisible cash, wants its streets clean of trash. The art of forgetting. Last night I cooked my socks in the microwave by mistake. What to do when you're so absent-minded? As well, I have frequently refrigerated my poems in the freezer to the point of having to thaw them later. And poetry is what emerges in defrosting. I have also lost to nature generations of galoshes, coats, scarves, umbrellas, even once an Egyptian skull cap, whose individual names I forget. The name of the Tsar escapes my mind, on whom was meant to be my dissertation. Or was it thesis? Water, all kinds of water under the all-purpose bridge. If I've forgotten so much via absent-mindedness, then how much have we forgotten as a species? One day we learn, another forget, everything, including this fact. It's possible, given enough time and effort, to forget anything, which is why we like to reminisce sometimes on those even who've decided they don't like us. We'll fight for our memories, the truth as it appeared once. But to remember something, we need to forget something, a different truth. My grandmother believed that if you dab any convenient spot on your body with iodine daily, it will help you keep your memory in old age. Head of the Marxism-Leninism chair at the Ivanova Energy Institute, where she taught philosophy and scientific atheism. She was the kindest soul, loved and spoiled me to distraction, and her blueberry cakes were of course the best in this world. Baptized as a child, on her retirement to a small apartment in the Crimea, she read the Bible, perestroika raging all around. Everyone wrote, thought and talked of Stalin, 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 Beria, Stalin. She read the Bible, both the Testaments. Thus dialectical materialism was forgotten and an ancient faith recovered. I too would like to forget a few things, keep trying, but tend to forget instead all the wrong ones, like submitting payments by the due date, the need to tie my shoestrings. Mnemosyne, and her daughters the muses, and her grandsons the museums. Literature too is a museum, as well as Lenin's mausoleum, which is essentially a tomb. As you must of course know, I've forgotten the remote control on the bathroom sink, where my reflection in the crooked mirror distracted me with its scowl. This is Earth life, but like hailing from outer space. When my daughter was born, I spent the night with her and my wife at the hospital and went home the next day to clean the apartment. I vacuumed the floor very thoroughly, my thoughts soaring far and wide. Little did I notice that the vacuum was running in blowout mode, so the condition of the floor changed hardly at all. This still makes my wife laugh, and may indeed be worth remembering against all death. While stress, duress, and strain, the painful neck crane, and other stuff rotten, are best forgotten. Tendency toward vagrancy. I have long had what Soviet psychiatrists called a tendency toward vagrancy. At 4, I would run away from home repeatedly for a whole day, alone or sometimes with a friend named Boris, of like age. We knew full well that we just can't do this, but nudge for nudge and wink for wink, we'd board the trolleybus number 10, I think, buy tickets at 4 kopecks each from our gleanings and savings of the week, stick them into the ticket punch on the wall, watch the Chad fall as you pulled, and ride all across Chisinau in half an hour to get off near that unforgettable restaurant built in the likeness of a huge wine barrel. We peered inside. It was cool. Then we had options. Go and splash in the local artificial lake. I couldn't swim yet. Wander in between along the banks, catching frogs to take home in a glass jar to populate a small construction pond. Why did we always use my shirt to do this? Or go and explore the local flea market, which was not at all safe to do, but even at 4 it's nice to have options. One guy sold what we thought was a gun. We asked him and he confirmed it. Those were days of cholera epidemics in Moldova. We'd buy peasant-cooked fodder corn on the cob when we got hungry, haggled with old ladies over pennies. We wouldn't catch the return trolley until sunset. Then it's always the same picture. The wicket creaks open, the landlord's mutant barks through froth, my wet shirt clings, I step out of the dark toward my mother, waiting by the door of our temporary house on Kaluga Street, which was a bit of a dirt road, probably still is. She has been crying, takes me inside. Room and kitchen, no bathroom or running water. The room had a brick stove, the kitchen a dirt floor with mice and sometimes grass, and a white washstand. These lines are all that has survived of them. There was great beauty in their squalor. She has been crying, takes me inside, says she will scold me later. I know it will be soon. First, she must call the cops to tell them I've been found. Of course, back then I didn't understand anything, neither how a poet harms his mother, nor how alienated, thank you Marx for that term, one can be from the start and free in the grip of that greatest paradox of all, a happy Soviet childhood. Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it very much. So I decided to include one of these poems that I like how Chet called them walled-in sonnets. I call them immured sonnets, but I like walled-in even better, maybe. Basically, the text, I cannot show it to you because it's messed up in my printout, but the text looks like a perfect square on the page, and it's composed of 2 poems, one wraps around the other, and the sonnet is in the middle. It's in a distinct typographical font, so you can easily separate the texts, and they still they somehow work together. So this is just one example of it. They're not easy to deliver in readings, these poems, because of this visual aspect. But I will read the two texts separately. I will read the wrapping text first and then the embedded sonnet to maybe give some idea of how it, how this works. And this one is called Diotima's Lesson. There's eros in the air, Mediterranean eros that makes you high, spells of eros, froth. The heart throbs out of the chest and bees hunt down street nectars. You whose hand appears to pluck pears off of pear trees of poetry. Then our well-studied smoke with mock cruelties edged sideways into our facial features soon melt, become small tournaments of lips, turns to storms of eyelash gesture. Yes, I do capitulate. Embrace me, coldly, dizzily. Drive deeply out of all my sorrows, for I truly am going crazy for the love of you. What do we do? Where do we henceforth flee? To the even downright minuscule room still available in the motel, the single bed with a view to finish what we promised. And this is, the next comes the embedded text, the formal sonnet. These flitting silver moths are evening's eyes, dancing their vigil round the lilac bush. Summer's intoxication makes us wise. The god of passion grants our every wish. The village sighs good nights. Since vineyard toil came to its restful pause, domestic lamps still hold desire, but have spent all their oil. What's that to us? Our fingers and our lips have miles to go yet before we get home, with a few foolish fireflies in our hair. Are we immortal? Evanescent hope spins lunar sweep nets in the swooning air, and our experience fits like a glove what Diotima taught us about love. Two more brief poems to conclude. This one is Facts of Life. Big fiefdoms of leaves, beehives of griefs, companies of thieves, conglomerates of these, a worldwide disease are anywhere you breathe. If you haven't yet thought that you're sold and bought, you haven't thought aught. The policy is signed. Now it can only bind, whether or not you mind. And lastly, Earth. I mean, the title is Earth. But what to make of the diminished lot of what man could have got and yet has not? But let him simply while away the day, and soon this will not matter anyway. Walking in vain across the cloudy sky, he scans the grasslands with an acid eye like a slightly more modern Robert Frost. But what of what man had, yet somehow lost? Staring at nature helps him to forget, to come to terms, to cancel out the debt. All night he whistled with a mockingbird, and now on his old keyboard types a word or two into the world and falls asleep. The land has willows. Something needs to weep. Thank you so much again.
I'll never forget that. And now Earth. That's just a beautiful thing to say. And in comes the entire planet. It could be a Monty Python scene, I think. De in 1977 geboren dichteres Justyna Bargielska beschreef in een interview de dubbele rol van de dichter. Enerzijds als die van een zwangere patiënte die wordt geport door dokters wanneer de hartslag van haar baby niet meer te zien is. En anderzijds als die van de ziekenhuisconsultant die een onderzoek uitvoert en studenten uitnodigt een kijkje te komen nemen. Als meesteres van de korte vorm staat Bargielska bekend om haar plotse sprongen tussen onderwerpen en haar speelse syntaxis. De alledaagse taal, filosofische vraagstellingen en religieuze verwijzingen. Met forensische precisie beschrijft haar poëzie de landschappen van het alledaagse bestaan, van de teleurstellingen en vernederingen. Stereotyperingen van het vrouw zijn, seksualiteit en het moederschap worden aangeroepen en vervolgens uit elkaar gerukt. Haar vertellingen zijn doorspekt met lyriek, wanhoop en soms zelfs mystieke verheerlijking. Bargielska ondervraagt het bestaan zelf en doet dit met een kracht ontsprongen uit verbijstering, woede en tederheid. Je kan er daarnaast nooit helemaal zeker van zijn of ze serieus of humoristisch is. Net wanneer je ontspant en je in bekend gebied waant in haar gedichten, kan ze opeens je aandacht trekken met grote existentiële vragen. Justyna Bargielska described the dual role of the poet as being on the one hand a pregnant patient prodded by doctors when her baby's heartbeat can no longer be detected, and at the same time the hospital consultant carrying out the examination while inviting students to take a look. Mistress of the short form, Bargielska is renowned for jump cuts in subject matter and playful syntax, equally at home with colloquial diction, philosophical inquiry and religious references. Bargielska's writing wrongfoots and disarms at the same time. With forensic precision, her poetry examines the landscapes of our existence, our disappointments and humiliations. However, in her dual role, she is also writing from the inside. Stereotypes of womanhood, sexuality and motherhood are invoked only to be ripped apart. Narratives are shot through with lyricism, despair and at times near mystical exaltation. She is witty, achieving a tongue-in-cheek humor that is both self-deprecating and macabre. Bargielska interrogates existence itself with an energy born of bewilderment, anger and tenderness, sometimes controlled, other times breaking through the surface. And you can never be entirely certain whether she's serious or joking. Just when you relax, feeling you are in familiar territory, someone is snapping a selfie. The ending of a love affair, a bug's crushed body on the steps. You are brought up sharply by much larger existential questions. Please give a warm hand to the consultant, the mother, the doctor and the patient, Justyna Bargielska.
Goedenavond, dames en heren. Philip said everything about how this festival is organized, and that is ideal, so maybe I will skip the thanks. However, I feel thankful for inviting me and just read the poems. Ona liczy na seks. Kościół obstaje przy grzebaniu ciał, tłumacząc, że sam Chrystus chciał być pogrzebany. Pewnie, przecież miałem z martwych wstać, a nie odrodzić się z popiołów jak Feniks, mówi Chrystus. Ale to nie znaczy, że inni nie mogą się odradzać z popiołów jak Feniks, mówi Chrystus. I jest naprawdę pissed off na ten głupi Kościół. Jak Feniks. Za 4 godziny cię zobaczę. Cokolwiek się stanie, zobaczę cię za 3 godziny. There will be time for it. O dziewczynie, która spłonie w piekle. W części zdziwieniowej naszego programu dziewczyna zdolna do największego okrucieństwa, do pomalowania psa na olejno, do spania z 3 chłopakami naraz, w tym z jednym w głowie, płonie w piekle. Gdy będziesz wciskał guzik, proszę, żebyś pamiętał, że nikt cię tak nigdy nie kochał jak ja i nikt tak bardzo jak ja nie pragnął być wolnym w twoim obliczu. Po prostu miałam swoje ograniczenia. To nie jest żaden z tych słodkich arbuzów. To jest ten to nie jest. Widzicie tę kobietę? Też ją widzę, tyle że od środka. Akwo, która kochasz czerwień, popatrz ze mną na tę kobietę, którą ja widzę od środka i powoli oswajam się z myślą, że nie ma wielu takich kobiet. I z drugą, dość podobną, że kobiet takich są miliony. Popatrz na mnie, Akwo, gdy jeszcze mogę się odwrócić i nie muszę być lepsza od poprzedniej mnie. Bo to zawsze jestem ja, bo on nie dotknąłby nikogo, kto nie byłby mną w tym przeszłym ani przeszłym życiu. Właściwie myślę, że go urodziłam. Akwo, właściwie myślę, że mogłam to zrobić. Przygoda. Czy Big Bang to był tylko seks? Rodzajowa pomyłka? Drgnienie wskutek drgań? O, kapitanie, nie chciałbyś pływać we wrzącym akwenie tego wiersza. A zawinąwszy do jego portu, nie poszedłbyś do łóżka z żadną czyhającą na ciebie w jego śliskich zaułkach dziewczyną. Niech chór potwierdzi energetyczny audyt. Tutaj zegar nie ma wskazówek. Wąż ma wskazówkę zamiast głowy, ale zwija się w kłębek. Dziewczyny o zgubnych proporcjach z wysoka rzucają te kłębki w noc. This one is my favorite one because it's more than others about death. Projekt wymiany ramek we wszystkich obrazkach. W długi letni dzień kosiarki mogą pracować od rana do nocy. Możesz się budzić i zasypiać przy ich warkocie, przy opowieści, której nie rozumiesz, ale kiedyś w końcu musisz wyjść do tego zjawiska. I wtedy żegnaj, cudny świecie, w którym cukierek anyżowy jest lubieżny przez zawartość litery Z. Odtąd przydzielone ci niesiesz sam, nie zmieniając się, bo z kim? Znienacka pojawiające się motyle lub tęcze bierzesz za to, czym naprawdę są. Zapowiedź nagłej śmierci, twojej i twoich, na wiele pokoleń, we wszystkie możliwe strony. Jednym słowem. Pytam się, czy wysłali te cholerne zwłoki, czy nie. Piszą mi, że wysłali. Opóźnienie mogło być spowodowane pogodą i żebym napisała w przyszłą środę, czy chcę reklamować, czy inne zwłoki w zamian. Sama nie wiem. Mam czas do środy, żeby to przemyśleć. Robak zdradził robaczka i teraz się wije i we śnie, i wszędzie. Natomiast w świetle z okien szkolnej biblioteki wygląda to tak, że moje dziecko stało się kamieniem i mówi mi: nie płacz, kobieto, skoro ja nie płaczę. No zamknijcie już, tu nie ma nic do patrzenia. Piękna młynarka. Wczoraj szedłem przez pustynię już po ciemku i coś na mnie zawarczało z cicha. Wrażenie nie byle jakie, serdeczności M. Lęk jak ze starej książki. Ona się boi, że może stać się panterą. I wcale jej to nie podnieca, bo co robi pantera? Czy pantera może nie zamykać ust do zdjęcia? Czy może iść spać w swoich nowych butach? Pantera czerstwi chleb, na który spojrzy. Ma taki dar. Młynarka ma dar, też fajny, że ożywia mięso. Ale jedno chciałabym mieć z pantery. Gdy ktoś przychodzi i mówi: pociąg, który istnieje tylko w rozkładzie, właśnie odszedł, umieć powiedzieć: ach tak, a nie próbować zjeść słońce, żeby nie zaszło. Kawa z imprinterką. A więc nie byłaś nigdzie. Byłam, ale nie nigdzie. To mogła być Abchazja, kraina pierwszych liter, gdzie mężczyźni kładą tory w nocy, pod wiatr, a potem się dziwią. W mapnikach trzymają zdjęcie tej pin-up girl, różowej z niebieskim. Inne święte obrazy stawiają pod ścianami. Rzucają kamieniami w gołębie, źli, że gołąb buja i kołuje, a potem wraca do siebie jak gdyby nigdy nic, nie bojąc się, że już się sobie nie spodoba. Oni są płytko w skórze, potem głębiej w płótnie, a na końcu i tak przychodzi ta pin-up, strzepuje, nie ma śladu. Seria drobnych okaleczeń. Dziewczyna Znika w przejściu podziemnym, żeby uciec przed mężczyzną, który krzyczy za nią. Gdy skończy się moje doczesne życie, myśli, wyjadę do Włoch i będę się całymi dniami kłócić przez balkon z sąsiadkami. Ale na razie muszę myśleć drobniej. Muszę myśleć Aleksandria, światło przesączone przez cytrynową esencję. Powiedziałam to raz na głos w autobusie. Czy mają tam taką wielką trumnę, żeby pomieściła autobus i resztę greckich łzawnic? I pięknie pachniał głuk. Jak drobno musisz mnie pokruszyć, żeby uzyskać barwnik, o który ci chodzi. Sól i ogień. Czy wiesz, jak się czujesz? Niektóre płyty są nagrywane głośniej niż niektóre inne płyty. Tak po prostu jest. Ale czy słyszysz swój głos? Ja nie słyszę swojego, chociaż słyszę twój. Chyba że na dnie oceanu, ale nie żadnego z dzisiejszych, tylko tego, o którym mój syn mówi z żalem, pokazując szkolne boisko. Kiedyś tu wszędzie była woda. Te głupie kontynenty ją podzieliły. I mówi, mamo, pamiętasz, jak nie potrzebowaliśmy oczu? Jak mogłabym zapomnieć, synku? Z 1000 przygód mojej nieśmiertelnej duszy ta była najlepsza. Pies ci je kapelusz. Tak szczerze to myślę, że nie wiesz, czym jest tęsknota. Czy twoja córka powiedziała ci kiedyś 53 razy pod rząd, że pies ci je kapelusz? Niech je, powiedziałam. Nie wiem, czy choć raz. Twoje maile to nie maile, to pieszczoty. Dzisiaj pójdę spać z tobą, mówi mi mail. Nie mailu. Dzisiaj pójdziesz spać z żoną, a ja pójdę spać z mężem. Niemniej, nie dalej niż jutro, planuję pozbyć się ze świata wszystkich naczyń. Do picia, do sikania, przechowywania prochów bliskich, zbierania krwi naszego Zbawiciela i będę ostatnim naczyniem na świecie. I umówmy się, ja i krew Zbawiciela, tylko my dwie wiemy, czym jest tęsknota. Pole bawełny. To musiał być dzień Bożego Ciała. Starsza kobieta wiodła za sobą okazałą dałnicę. Córciu, córciu, gdy umrę, co się z tobą stanie? A ja nie mogłam ci, starsza, obiecać, kobieto, że jej nie zjemy. Niedokładnie znam zwyczaje mojego gatunku, nie na tyle dokładnie. Widuję nas, jak przystajemy na rogach ulic, wyjmujemy z portfeli zdjęcia budynków krytych złotymi kopułami i pokazujemy je sobie nawzajem, mężczyźni i kobiety, starzy i młodzi. Ale czy tęskniąc, czy grożąc? Nie wiem. To musiał być ten dzień. Wzdłuż torów albo z krajem parku szedł mężczyzna w brązowej marynarce. Niósł piłkarzyki główkami do dołu. I nic na to nie poradzę, ale słońce, ono chyliło się ku zachodowi. Inna róża. Urodziłam niesamowicie piękną córkę. Jej zęby, jej włosy są jak z pieśni nad pieśniami. I sama poczułam się piękna. Dziękuję. Ale ona to zupełnie inne piękno. To jest piękno, które chcę chronić. Gdybym miała jakieś swoje piękno, wstydziłabym się go. Zresztą pewnie mam jakieś piękno. Faceci nie lataliby tak za mną, gdybym go nie miała. Ale nie lubię swojego piękna, bo faceci latają za nim. Piękno mojej córki to co innego. Piękno mojej córki, tak uważam, jest jedyną nadzieją tego świata. Oh. They gave me a huge list. And I'm in work, I should read it all. Spóźniona nowenna do świętej Rity. Naprawdę nie chciałam wtedy umrzeć. Dopiero co nauczyłam się składać dłonie do modlitwy tak, jakbym coś w nich trzymała. Dopiero co nauczyłam się negocjować. Z wdziękiem, choć stojąc po pas w morzu płomieni. Nauczyłam się negocjować wszystko, opisując to przymiotnikami, które dobrze brzmią w tłumaczeniu na angielski. Dłonie do modlitwy składałam tak, jakbym kryła w nich coś więcej niż kamień i lubiłam ten trik. Ten obraz wyglądał jak tryptyk, ale nie można go było zamknąć. Myślałam, że to pęk chryzantem, a to była główka dziecka. Myślałam, że to ogrodowy parasol, a to był duch przyszłych świąt. Gdybym modliła się jak należy, z rękami do góry, żyłabym. Kamienica. Złoszczą mnie okna w domu na drugim brzegu ulicy, która pieniądz się płynie dołem. Godzinami zaglądam sąsiadom w garnki, w których wrą serduszka wróbelków. Tak tata nazywał cynaderki w dzieciństwie, czyli wtedy, gdy koty znikały i wracały po zmianie kwadry z oberwanym uchem. Teraz już nie do mnie. Okna na parterze to lupanar. W skrzynce są ulotki z kobietami tak dorosłymi, jak ja nigdy nie będę. Choćbym przeszła na kolanach z kuchni do pokoju po potłuczonym szkle. Na piętrze człowiek z psią mordą, czy może pies z ludzką twarzą? Nigdy nie wiem. Na wędce spuszcza szklane oko i podgląda te z dołu. Złoszczą mnie ich okna. Przesadzają z tym życiem, tak jakby nie wiedzieli, że wcale nie trzeba. 2 lusterka, w tym jedno powiększające. Królowa Ogień pisze list. Uciekajcie, ludzie i samochody. Chyba sama wiem najlepiej, co jest dla mnie degradujące. Gdybym zabiła nasze dzieci i jeździła z nimi po mieście, to by było dla mnie degradujące. Gdybym to, co robię, by przeżyć, robiła dla urody, to by było dla mnie degradujące. Prawidłowe równanie nie zagraża miłości. Prawidłowe równanie, w którym wiarę da się bezstratnie zastąpić tęsknotą. Język, w którym mogłabym zostać tak bezboleśnie zbawiona, który miałeś mi wymyślić, a nie wymyśliłeś, to by było dla mnie degradujące. Nie załączam buziaków, nie daję całusów. Toczę wojnę na wszystkich frontach. Odpisz mi jak najszybciej. To last one. Do Chloris. Jeśli to prawda, Chloris, że mnie kochasz, to wybacz. Ale kompletnie nie wiem, co mam zrobić z takimi zagadnieniami jak głód na świecie, że papież nie pozwala murzynom używać prezerwatyw, że ekran w końcu gaśnie, a gasnąc ujawnia, że nie jest drzwiami, że fotografowie zabijają się z powodu zdjęć, które zrobili. Choć światło było niesamowite, zabijają się. Jeśli to prawda, Chloris, że mnie kochasz, to nie wiem nawet, co mam zrobić z tym morzem, które rozstępując się połyka niesforne psy, przypadkowe dzieci, statki z ich kapitanami, miasta, kraje, światy. Pływam w tym morzu, póki płynę do ciebie, Chloris. Jeśli mnie kochasz, powiedz mi, co mam zrobić, gdy zrozumiem, że w nim pływam, a już cię nie kocham. There's a work to do, still work to do. Kobieta obwieszcza pszczołom śmierć pana domu i zakłada czarną wstążkę na ulu. That's the title. To niesamowite, co mogła zrobić jedna pęknięta rura. To niesamowite, co mogli zrobić jeden mężczyzna i jedna kobieta. Drzwi zamykają się za kelnerem, ale zamykają się za tobą, tak jak każde drzwi, które się zamykają. Opłakałam już przed pszczołami nasze rozstanie. Teraz spróbuję się cieszyć tym, co nastąpi przed nim. Aż do tego momentu, w którym przestaję wiedzieć, co mam robić z czasem, który mi pozostał. Więc kładę się spać, a ktoś stoi nade mną i mówi: węże tak śpią, zwinięte w kłębek, jak kotki albo jak małe dzieci. I patrzcie, bo to jest pozycja, w której biorą do nieba. Thank you very much.
Now may I invite you both to take a seat over here.
Yeah, whatever you like to sit. Now that could have been a question. Why do you prefer that spot? But I'm not going to ask that question. Here's a glass of water. The photographers in your poem, who commit suicide because of the picture.
Yeah.
Is it because of the beauty of the light, or because they made a perfect picture?
It wasn't a perfect picture because they had actually WordPress Photo Prize for that.
Right.
I don't remember the name of the photographer, but everybody knows the photo. It's on this photo is a little girl, little Somalian girl,
Right.
and the bird. I don't. Sam.
In what language?
Bird who eats the corpse.
Oh, yeah, like a vulture?
A crow.
Or a crow?
No, a carrion crow?
In
Well,
Mexico, there is a lot
Yeah,
of this.
I think it's a vulture.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and this is the picture. And the photographer, instead to help the girl, he took the picture.
Right.
And then he was very famous, and then he decided to kill himself because he couldn't bear this,
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know, the suffering that he portrayed. Actually.
Right.
I don't remember the name of photographer, but it's all in Google, I believe.
We will look it up, vulture. But no, because when I was reading it, while the translation was projected, I was thinking, would that be possible for a poet to have written a poem that is so to be surprised by such a cruel tale? Or what do you think? It's a different genre. It's a different technique, but.
I'm not so good in suicides, actually, as you can see.
You're very happy being alive.
Yeah, so maybe try with film.
No, I'm not saying I'm not trying to say this as a personal question, but do you think, well, because we'll get to something else after this and about surprises, but do you think it would be possible to surprise yourself with such a big poem that you would, enter emotional problems?
Is it this for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, masterpieces
Because she's a
are
very happy girl. So.
bloody depressing, aren't they? I mean, they're so. I mean, I don't know if I understand the question correctly and all its implications, but are we talking about the kind of poem that humbles you?
Yeah,
to
maybe.
the point
Yeah.
the point. I've never. I mean, I don't know if this could literally ever happen, but in some possible world, perhaps. I mean.
Have you ever written something that you were surprised by or humbled?
Surprised by, perhaps. Humbled, hardly. No self-humbling experiences of this kind. But I mean, how could it work? I wrote such a masterpiece that I feel worthless.
No, it could be the content. It could be a very sad poem, like, oh yeah, now I finally realize how sad this planet is.
Can you imagine yourself being in a good mood, having a drink on or something, and then writing a really sad poem and reading it and becoming all depressive? That's possible, by the way.
It must be possible.
The mind is a
some
wonderful
kind
thing.
Of universe. So let's move on to the surprises. And in both your poems, I think there are a lot of surprises are happening. Do they happen when you are writing, or do you feel like you have to come up with something surprising or disruptive?
What do you mean by surprise, actually?
Well, I mean, not going from A to B,
Oh,
taking a detour.
Well, life is full of surprises.
Mhm.
For example, after my performance at poetry reading, I went for a walk, and there was a huge bird flying over me, and he pooped at me. Well,
Personally, at you, he had a personal problem with you.
well, yes, and someone who doesn't like surprises would say, "Why did you do it to me? Actually, to me." And I just started to think, what should I save first? My jacket. This is my only jacket with me here.
It was this one.
Or my hair.
Uh-huh.
And I decided to clean my jacket. You know what the conclusion
When
is
this
actually?
no,
That I didn't have time to clean my hair.
today.
Yes, today.
No. So it's
an
still,
hour ago.
It's still there.
Yes, it's still there.
Maybe we can ask the stream people to zoom in on it.
No, I have an issue. I used an issue. Then I with the dryer dried it,
I'm very happy.
But I didn't clean that. And this is the surprise of one of the surprises that happen every time. So if it's in life, how could we avoid it?
Well, we
in
used to have a Dutch critic who said, in a story, no sparrow can fall off the roof without a reason. And in poetry, I think
They
can.
do that all the time.
They do it all the time. That's what makes poetry so interesting. What about you? What is the disruptive? What is the role of the disruptive in your?
I just want to say that we Russians believe that when a bird shits on you, it's for good luck.
I know that.
So maybe you should buy a lottery ticket tonight.
Well, actually, I do. This is going to be naive. I don't think that money makes people happy.
Oh, okay, that's a really good answer. But let's get back to.
But why go out and try to meet someone?
Yeah, that's also very nice.
Maybe.
It's too bad we can't do an interview after that, because that would have been interesting. Because then we could have found out if you were actually lucky. Let's move.
You use the word disruptive. I'm not sure what prompted it, but it's interesting that
It's from an interview I read with you.
Oh, okay, all right.
We
Yeah,
were
I
talking
see now,
about
yeah,
this,
okay.
so now maybe you know where I'm.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, poetry is and has been for a long time, from a very young age, from a fairly young age, been an obsession of mine and something that matters to me more than many of my other activities. But it is, in a sense, disruptive of my life, because I don't write every day. I don't have the discipline like some poets, so disciplined or so. They write in a systematic way, including my wife, who's a wonderful poet herself. I don't do that. I write in spurts. They wait for it to happen, and then when it happens, I drop everything else. Other things get screwed up, and in that sense, it's disruptive. It just comes out of nowhere.
As an activity.
Yeah.
But within the poem, within the narrative of the poem.
Oh, it can be disruptive or not, or perfectly still and sort of finished, accomplished, as the word goes.
Right.
It depends on the poem, but yeah, I mean, I have these different sensibilities struggling in me. You may notice on readings, if you read my latest book, for example, that there are very different sorts of poems in them, and in the modern English-speaking world, much of the poetry used to be, I think this is less the case now, we're moving away from it, but we used to be divided into these camps. There was the, in America, language poetry and its equivalent in Britain, and then there's the traditional sonnet and the lyric and the narrative poem and all that. And it seems to me that I do all these things, and my style has changed over the years in ways that I could not have predicted, against my own will or independently of my own will, as it were. So, and in some poems that happens even at the level of the text. I don't know, but I'm not sure I can generalize very well about it. I'm not a good a psychoanalyst of myself that way. Except that I know that surprise is, I think, central to the arts. I mean, why would we care if it's not wow?
Yeah, there was an interview here in the big auditorium a couple of years ago with 3 poets who are also prose writers. And then this one prose writer said, yeah, I always know the way my novel is going to end. And then the other prose writer said, really? How boring that must be.
I never know how my poem is going to end.
But there's always different ways of going about this, I guess.
Right, sure.
Justyna, I mean, we have all seen the walled-in sonnet.
Uh-huh.
Do you experiment with form as well?
No, no.
Why is it a no? Why is it a big
well,
no?
because for me, maybe the right place to experiment with form is kitchen. Actually. Yeah.
I could
And-
ask you about a dish, but let's not go.
And no, I'm not. I'm quite traditional. This is traditional thinking about poem. Of course, these are not sonnets. These are not.
What would be like a traditional form in Polish poetry?
Something like
free
that.
verse?
Something like that, like we
So
see on the screen.
Relatively free.
Relatively free, yes, and this is a poetry that cares about the natural melody of Polish.
Right, natural breath as well.
Natural breath, and I think except linguistic poets, because we have a commando of linguistic poets.
You have different groups, right? There's a group who read
there is
Franco.
like I said, commando of linguistic
okay.
poets, and all the
commandos
others.
and the people who are free.
Yes.
And the commandos
exactly.
are those the people who like to read Frank O'Hara?
No, I said I'm talking about linguistic poetry. It's focused on experiments with language, but maybe not with language, with
Based more on ideas or formulas.
yes,
Right, yeah.
It's something like that. But generally, Polish poetry is focused on melody, on being communicative, and we have actually nowadays hermetic poets.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Right.
I'm not a critic. I'm just a worker. Yeah.
How do you write these walled-in sonnets? Where do you start? When do you know whether it is going to be one?
Before I answer this, I want to interject that I don't see myself as an experimental poet either, and I do not have a heck of a lot of respect for schools of poetry that claim to be. I used to, as an editor, every once in a while, I get these letters that say, "I'm an innovative poet," and it's kind of as a self-disparaging. How the hell do you know if you're an innovative poet?
Most things have been tried before, of course.
And when we talk about experiments, I mean, the way I understand the word is, in science we test a hypothesis, right? Often I've asked this question, you're an experimental poet, what is the hypothesis? What is it that you're testing? Does it come out true or false? And often there's just sheer incoherence that follows.
I'll remember that one. That's a good
in
one.
response to this. Yeah, but...
So what would you call it if someone is trying to find a new form, or maybe not a new form, or playing with form? How would you... Because we need it. We need a label for
writing.
it. Writing? Yeah, but not all writing is the same.
I mean, I suppose there are very definitely there are innovative poets. I'm against it as a... There's a great kind of sort of hubris that goes into saying, it's like saying I'm a wonderful poet, but even more pernicious than that I can understand. Everybody who has any sense of self-worth as a poet thinks, I don't think I'm a terrible poet myself, but saying it's a new form of preciousness, kind of like a new way of congratulating ourselves. We've achieved something here because these people, the traditionalists, the old school people, they don't achieve anything. They just keep repeating the same stuff over and over again. And here we're active, experimenting.
Yeah.
Let's feel good about it. But, often these experiments, I think, fail. On the other hand, how do we reconcile this with the fact that there is a change in form, experimentation, invention, and all those things? Well, it's long trial and error. It's not as simple as I'm going to try this idea, you asked me about how I came up with these mirrored sonnets. That's
the writing process. So how do you start?
I originally, it was practically by some kind of accident of the imagination. I was reflecting on this strange painting of Kazimir Malevich, The Black Square. Everybody knows it. It's just, a statement, an aesthetic statement, black square. But if you actually look at the painting, I think he made a few copies of it. There's several of them, but the one or the ones that I've seen, had occasion to see, when you're in front of it, it looks different. It's not like a blank square. There are variations of tone, brush strokes maybe, and these things that if you peer at it closely, you can start imagining that there are actually things in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started imagining something like that, and I thought, though, there might be words in it. It might be text. And I don't know, I wrote a few texts that were just like typographically boxes on the page. And for some reason, I did not set a hypothesis to test or anything like that. So I wasn't self-consciously experimenting, but I guess I was unself-consciously experimenting in that I started trying to create something. And there were some attempts that I threw away because they were not very interesting. And then I had all these sonnets that...
They were already there.
Some of them were already there, yeah. And then I wasn't sure what to do with them anymore. I had outgrown them, as it were. I had moved on to the new stage. So I thought I didn't want to throw them away. I thought they were my poetry. I wasn't ashamed of them. But I found this use. I started combining them and so on. And then eventually I wrote a few in which, more than a few perhaps, from scratch, following the method already in place, as it were. I'm sorry I'm being so long-winded.
No, it was an interesting. It's interesting to hear this. Justyna, can I get back to you? Can I ask you some questions about the poems? Because not everything. I didn't understand everything. I don't need to understand everything.
Why do you think I do understand that?
Maybe I shouldn't.
Why should
ask these
I
questions.
understand?
But I can try, and you can answer me my question maybe as a reader of a poem, like it's written by someone.
Let's try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first poem ends with what is it? I will see you in 3 hours. I will see you in 4 hours. What do you think that poet was talking about, and how does it relate to the Jesus Christ story?
Well, there are two histories in this poem.
Right.
The first one is about this actually strange idea. Well, this is some Catholic joke, and I don't know if it is the place to recall that. But we cannot. There is no possibility to make a funeral service. In front of ashes of men, we do need the corpse.
Right.
The corpse.
The corpse, yes, yeah. Thank you. The corpse. So, but of course, for our Mother Earth, it is precious to when we choose to be cremated.
Yes.
Yes.
You mean it's worse for the environment, or how do you mean precious?
Well, it's ecological.
Yeah.
People should be cremated.
Well, there's different stories about that. Really?
Should people be cremated? Yes.
But it's all, well, this is a different discussion, so we'll leave that for a break.
Okay,
because
personally,
I used to want to be cremated, and then I read that it's actually not very good for the environment.
Oh.
It's better to...
In places where they actually do this on a regular basis, like India, where all the stuff goes into the rivers.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are clean ways of doing it, right? Not that I want to...
There are.
Yeah.
Well, I just read that my people, the Frisians, they used to leave the dead bodies out in the field for the dogs.
This is.
But let's go back to your
sick.
poem. Yes.
Okay, but in my poem
Yeah.
is this kind of I don't know.
The 3 and the 4
dispute
hours.
with this Catholic rules. Actually, and then it all is not so. It becomes irrelevant in front of woman waiting for men.
Right.
And that's all. That's
But
the
that's a
concept
piece
of
of the
that.
context that
Yes,
that we
this
as
is
Dutch
all,
people
and,
don't know.
all that debate about Catholicism and Christ and Phoenix and everything is not so important when the woman, which is talking in the poem, remembers that she is now waiting for the man that she loves.
Right.
And then that's all. It's quite simple poem, I think.
It is. Now it is.
Simple, short, and there is Christ inside, so I think
fire.
it's a hit.
Okay. I'm afraid we have to end because it's 9 o'clock and you need to be back in the big auditorium to prepare for the last
don't know what,
program.
actually.
For you don't know what. Well, that's
Yeah.
going to be a surprise.
Yes, another one.
Okay, thank you for paying attention and have a nice evening.
Justyna, I enjoyed this very much.
Thanks. I had a lot more to talk about. It's just the time is very short.